Hello! So I've spent the past several weeks, months, I guess, really, traveling around to all kinds of different conferences and conventions, and doing all of that in the very early stages of being publicly out as transgender, and the very early stages of being on testosterone and not really passing, and not having a legal name change yet. And I know there are a lot of trans folks out there who are also in fandom and like to go to conferences like this, or who have to travel for other reasons. So I thought I would share today a little bit of how my experience with some of those logistics happened. And then in the second half of the video, I want to talk a little bit about just some of my basic observations of interacting with people and things like that. So first of all, like I said, I don't have a legal name change yet. So, you know, when I was on planes and stuff, I had my old name. That was pretty annoying because a lot of airlines still write like Miss or Mr. before your name on the ticket. And there are a lot of like gate agents who like to do things like say, there you go, Mr. So-and-so, and there you go, Miss So-and-so, when they like hand you your thing. And it's like, I'm otherwise passing to people and then the agent like tries to call me Miss or like stumbles over it, and just really awkward. And then there's also like the issue of like airport bathrooms of like, does a gate agent who knows your gender that's on your ticket, are they watching you choose whether to go into the men's room or the women's room? The other thing that trans people often worry about is going through security at the airport. I can only speak for the United States. I have traveled in other countries, but I'm not overly familiar with their security, so I'm just gonna be speaking about the United States here. But the TSA on their website actually has an entire page for transgender travelers. All TSA agents are supposed to be trained on that, and at the very least, if you need to take things to a higher level, like the TSA has your back. The problem comes in when, even though employees have been trained, they might not recognize what a trans person actually looks like when they encounter one. So what I did is I actually went to the TSA's website and I printed out one of their, it's called a disability card. They don't actually tell you that you should use it if you are a transgender traveler, but I heard of a lot of other people doing it, so I decided to do that. So all you do is you go to their website, I'll put a link in the description box, and then you print it out, and I laminated mine too just to like keep it looking fresh. It looks like this on one side, and then on the other side you can type in what your condition is that you would like them to know about. And so this is intended for you to just kind of like show to the agent, like if they're asking any sorts of questions and you don't feel comfortable vocalizing for other passengers to hear that you are transgender, you don't want to out yourself, you can just kind of hand it to them. And then even if they hadn't recognized like, oh, this person's transgender, then you hand them this, and then they do know, because then they're like, oh, I've been trained on this, I know what to do now. And so it's just like a discreet way to kind of handle the situation. I didn't have any case where I needed to show it to anyone this summer, but I did always have it in my pocket. Like even when I go through the scanner, I had it in my pocket just in case. Like I wanted it on me in case anything bad happened. I don't know if they like took me away for extra screening and I didn't have a chance to grab my bag or something. And at one point when I went through, they were like, do you have anything in your pockets? Like something's coming up. And I said, oh, I have my disability card. And they were like, that was fine. They knew what I meant. I have had a lot of situations in the past of them not knowing quite what gender I am. Like I've gotten both security pat downs, like the male pat down and the female pat down, and just like haven't said anything because I didn't even like really know what to do, so I just like let it happen and then left. As far as traveling with medication, so like I had to travel with my testosterone, and that included my needles and everything. I told my doctor ahead of time that I was going to be traveling a lot. He wrote me a letter. I've carried this with me everywhere this summer because not only does it clear me for needles, it is the only like official looking thing that I have with both of my names on it, my old name and my preferred name. Again, I haven't actually had to use it for anything. When I was going through airport security, I put this as well as my prescription information in the same like Ziploc bag that I put my vial and my needles and like, you know, my alcohol swabs and my sharps container. And I put that in a separate tub to all of my other stuff, so it like went through, and I never had any problems because I think they could see, oh, that looks like medicine, and I can clearly see there's a prescription in there, so we're not even gonna bother this person. But if there were any red flags or had any questions for whatever reason, all the stuff was right there in the bag, so all they had to do was take out the paperwork and see it. And so as I was saying, just by chance, this letter has both of my names on it, and it's currently the only thing I have with both of my names. I have business cards that say Jackson, but I don't have any photo ID that does. And so there were several things I encountered throughout the summer where there was a potential that I might run into some problems. So I kept this with me pretty much everywhere I went. A lot of different parts of my travel sort of get booked for me as a speaker, or I have friends who are like putting me on the list for parties and stuff, and I have to like double check, like, did you put down Jackson or did you put down my old name? Is this a situation where I'm gonna have to show photo ID to like pick up a ticket? Like hotel reservations generally have to be under my legal name. All of my registrations for conferences were under Jackson, and pretty much every conference will tell you that you need a photo ID to pick up your badge. Fortunately, being like a guest and a speaker, I think is the reason that I never ran into any problems. I usually just told them my name or showed them my barcode thing, and that was enough. But I did have this in my back pocket just in case there was an issue. I would like to think that for all of the conventions and conferences I went to, for a regular attendee, there wouldn't be an issue either. But if there is, I would highly recommend having some sort of doctor's note. If you're not at the point where you've seen a doctor or could have any sort of doctor's note, just have something prepared that can look kind of official, or just really be prepared for what you're going to say. Look up all of the conference's policies. If they have any posted policy on like transgender attendees, you can maybe even email the organizers ahead of time just to like find out what the situation is. And like pretty much every single conference, especially fandom kind of conferences these days, are very aware of trans issues and like willing to work on it. Of course, if you're stealth and having an issue, I mean, that's a whole other barrel of fish. But probably if you are stealth, then hopefully you have like at least one form of photo ID with your name on it. I don't think I really had any other issues this summer. Almost every conference I've been to, even like not fandom ones, have had gender neutral restrooms, which are great. I've actually never encountered any problem using the men's restroom. Gender neutral ones I almost even avoid at this point because I feel like that ounts me more than just using the men's room. The only awkwardness is that I really hate ending up in the men's room with a friend in there, like someone who knows me. I get very awkward about that because that just feels weird. And that happens a lot more when you're at cons because you like know everyone there. I was terrified of being recognized in the bathroom at cons actually, because that happened to me a lot before. But I think that's a little bit more the difference in cultures of bathrooms, because like in the women's room, people will talk and they will talk to you if they recognize you, which is like not the greatest thing to do, FYI. But like you just keep your head down in the men's room so you don't even know who's in there. In and out, done. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all of my logistical advice. Feel free to ask me questions because there's probably a lot of stuff that I have actually encountered or thought about that I just can't remember right now. But moving on to more like general observations. This summer was great. It was so cool to just be out and getting the correct pronouns and the correct name. I think one of the greatest things was the fact that no one who like recognized me, who like came up and like wanted a picture, wanted to talk, none of them used the wrong name. They all called me Jackson or Jack and like proper pronouns. It was fantastic because I was so concerned about like, what do you do in that situation? Like if someone comes up and they're so excited to meet you, but they call you the wrong name and then you have to be like, oh, actually, I don't know, that just seems like so much more awkward than how awkward every case of having to correct someone on that is. So I'm really glad that didn't happen. Thank you to all of you for just being amazing allies. I see you all in the comments correcting people on my name and pronouns. You are fantastic and I love you so much for that. So thank you. A lot of my friends, on the other hand, had a little bit more trouble. They were mostly fantastic, but you know, they all had little slip-ups that I think happen when you know someone very well. And in particular, for so many of my friends, they hadn't seen me in person since I came out. So even if they'd been like practicing with talking to people, they hadn't seen me yet. I think that confused their brains a little bit. I mean, that was totally fine. I totally get it. What was interesting was if we were just one-on-one, they were totally fine. They were getting it. But as soon as like other of our friends came into the picture, then they would mess up. And I think maybe that was like a weird neuro thing of just like, well, this is who you are in the context of these other people, so now my brain switched back to old pronouns. I don't know, it's kind of interesting. People for whom I guess I was always just an idea for, who were just meeting me in person for the first time, it was a lot easier to change name and pronouns versus people who have known me in real life, but this was their first time seeing me with like the new name and pronouns. And I think when someone slips up on pronouns, like it can bother you. You can kind of take it like, I guess they really don't see me this way. And like, I definitely get bogged down by that thought sometimes, but I think you have to just like brush it off and remember that that's not really what it is. It really is just like a force of habit thing. Cause like I have a couple of buddies who have just totally accepted me as male. Like the way that they interact with me has changed a bit and the kinds of things that we like talk about and do together. And occasionally one of them will still slip up on a name, but it's so rare that they do that. And the way that they treat me has changed so differently. Like I know that they don't see me that way anymore. It really is just a force of habit thing. There have been a couple of changes so far in, you know, attending conferences and networking and stuff that I don't really like because they're signs of the patriarchy. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're just that I'm at a different place in my career, I'm a little bit older, you know, things are progressing in that way. Basically what's happening is I'm being treated with a lot more respect. So in the past, when I would like go to networking events or, you know, just be talking to people, pitching the HBA to them and stuff, I used to run into a very big problem of men hitting on me and having no interest in talking about work. You know, to the point like we had to take my phone number off of my business cards because anytime I handed my business card to a guy, he thought I was just giving him my phone number. It was a real problem. And now I still get the problem of people not wanting to talk about the HPA when I network with them, but now it's because they keep offering me jobs. Yeah. Before, I was just this object to flirt with, and now I'm a potential employee. And again, maybe that's just where I'm at in my career, but I've gotta think a little bit of it is maybe like the patriarchy, really, man. Smash the patriarchy. I just wanted to share some of the thoughts that I had being out at cons this summer and some of the different obstacles that trans people encounter and how those went for me. If you are trans, please share in the comments some of the experiences that you've had, other tips or advice that you have. And if you're not trans, I hope that you learned something, and I would still love to hear your comments as well about whatever. Tell me what your favorite type of crepe is. Clip. That's what I want to know today. All right, I'll see you next time.